Okay, today we're going to be doing a drone hacking system where you can take control of a drone, fly it around, and then when you get out, the drone will return back to its initial path and follow the spline around and around. We'll be doing a first-person version, and this red sphere is just the debug sphere that you can turn off. So if we go to first person, I'm going to set up the first person character here. The first person character is basically the default, except I've taken out all the gun and stuff. It's just the camera. And then we'll be setting this up. A lot of it I think we'll just walk through, but we will be doing some of it from scratch, particularly like the drone parts where you need to set some settings. So if you click the spline here, you can turn off the debug sphere. See the drone comes down and just follows the spline, and you can take control of it, and it will go back when you've relieved control of it. Okay. So the way this works is there's a spline with an actor that goes around the spline, and then the drone is set to follow that actor. So that's really what the debug sphere is there. It's basically the point where the drone is trying to get to. So let me simulate it. So the drone is always trying to get to this point whenever the player is not controlling it. And then the drone itself is just using its own system to try to get to that actor. If you had 3D pathfinding, you would use that here instead. Right now, I don't have 3D pathfinding in this project, so for example, one side effect of that is the drone will like go through walls to return. Yeah, see, it just basically lerps directly to that point, which is fine if you set up your environment to kind of handle that. Maybe you can constrict how far the drone goes, but if you want it to be fancier, you would want to put some 3D pathfinding here instead of this lerp 2. So let's see. Let's kind of break it down. We'll do it in sections. There's a few different elements. I'm just going to pull this up here. So there's this is the menu. To select it, this is probably what we'll actually make from scratch, because this has I think the most unique element, which is the deprojecting from screen in order to select it to hack it. The drone path is actually somewhat simple. We're not actually going to be using that drone path. We're going to be using this one here. So initially, I set it up where the path itself would move the drone around, but I found out it actually works better by having the path just move like a dummy actor around and then have the drone handle the actual movement. I think you get a much better result that way. So let's set up a new path. So we're just going to, since we're doing another one of these, we're going to set up the path, and we're going to set up the path kind of like right over here. Okay, so the first one, the spline will just be a pawn. So this will be line path 2. Over here, we'll call this video. And obviously we need a spline here. Oh, not a static mesh, a spline. There we go. We can even make it the root. The main setting you need to check with the spline, you can move these around by clicking them, and then if you hold down Alt, you can make a new one. I'm just going to make basically 2 more. You can still adjust them even when they're in the scene. The main thing you need to click though is closed loop, and you can see what that does. It makes it into a closed loop. So let's quickly just drag this out here. And you can still adjust the spline per instance, so don't worry about it too much. Just like that. Okay. I'm just giving it a little bit of 3D elements so it's a bit more interesting. Okay. But then within the spline, the logic is not too complicated, but we need to make a dummy actor. I'm actually going to use the other dummy actor, and I'm going to show you what it is. This debug actor is what I call it. Literally all it is a sphere with this laser. This is actually in the default project, at least in 4.27. And it's just over the sphere, and then I've just turned off collision. That's all the dummy actor is. Nothing more than that. There's no logic in it anywhere. It doesn't have any variables or anything. So let's go to the spline path. So on begin play, we need to spawn it in. That's the debug actor, and then we can split this open. We really don't care where it spawns, so we can leave that there. We will need tick, but we won't need the other one, so I deleted that one. And we want to make this a variable, so I'll just call it debug actor. And then the drone itself, we want to create a reference. And this we can just make a pawn, since we don't really need it to be a specific type of drone. I don't think anyway. But we do want to check this and see, does implement interface. And this interface is going to be one that we'll use on the drone. The one I'm using on the drone, I'm calling a vehicle interface, control vehicle interface. The way you implement an interface, you can create them under blueprints, right here, blueprint interface. And then in this one, we only have two functions within this interface. We have the enter vehicle, which has a pawn variable called the player pawn, and then the set follow actor, which actor to follow, which is just an actor. So then we want to check this. And then once we have that, we want to call this, since we know it has that interface, so we can call those functions. So we can set follow actor. By the way, this drone reference, we want to make instance editable. And then if it does implement the interface, go ahead and set the actor to this drone actor. Okay. And then we can make a quick little variable here, and we say show debug. And this will be just a Boolean, and we'll set it to true by default. And basically what we'll do here is, if we do want to show the debug, we'll make sure this debug actor is visible or not. And we can just set actor hidden. Okay. Okay, so if we do want the debug, then we don't want to hide it, and if we don't want the debug, we will hide it, like that. Okay, so that's everything we need to do in begin play. Now we need to make the logic to make the actor actually move around the spline, which is not terribly complicated since we don't need to handle any of the movement, any of the logic for when the player controls it, since that will be handled within the drone. So let's actually make a distance along spline. And then this we need to set. So this will kind of control how far along the spline we should be. So we need to grab the spline here and then get spline length. That one right there. And then we want to use the distance along spline, and we're lerping it to the end of the spline. So F interp, and we want to use the constant one, because otherwise it will basically ease into the end of the spline, which we don't want actually. We want it to constantly go around the spline at a constant speed. Delta time, this one's a little confusing. If you look up delta time, you actually want delta seconds, not delta time. There is a delta time, I think anyway, or at least there was. I guess they fixed that. And then the interp speed, this we'll call patrol path speed. And this one we want instance editable. The distance along spline is not instance editable. That's a variable we're using in runtime. But this one we can set to something, let's see, what did I set my other one to? Like 320 I think works pretty well. Maybe we'll make this one a bit faster, 450. And we can just lerp that. So this is lerping that, but now we need to actually use this distance along spline. Fortunately, that's pretty straightforward. So we can just grab this debug actor and go ahead and convert it to a validated get, since we want to make sure it's valid before we use it. And then we are just setting the transform. So set actor transform. Like this. And then the transform we want to use is we can grab our spline and then get transform at distance along spline, and we can plug in our distance. We want this to be world space, and put that in right there. And I think we've done enough that we can look at this. So let's go ahead and simulate. And you can see our sphere moving along the spline. Where did our spline actually go though? Why can't I see the spline? Spline. Oh, there it is. Okay, it just disappeared for a second. Okay, but see, it gets stuck at the end. So this is what we need to handle next. So it goes around, but then you notice when it gets to the end, it stops. So that's what we need to handle. Fortunately, that's not too complicated. We basically just need to reset the distance along spline to 0 when you get to the end of the spline. So how do we check if we're at the end of the spline? Well, we get the distance along spline, and then we get the spline length, and then we just check, hey, are these close to equal? If they are close to equal, then go ahead and reset it. Another reason you want to use constant is this close to equal will not work as well if it's ease in, because basically what will happen is it will keep slowing down and like never actually reach this. So you kind of want the constant. It'll work more reliably with this equal. So let's jump back to our scene. So it should go around, and when it gets to the end, it will keep going just like that. Perfect. Okay, so we have it spinning. That's the logic for the spline. Now we need to use the drone. The drone, I think I'm just going to review. I'm not going to make it from scratch, but if there's anything confusing. So these are the drone controls. Maybe we will make a drone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new drone. But for this stuff, I'm just going to kind of copy in. But this stuff, because it involves changing the character settings, I want to make sure to show that because this can be tricky to get this working. Okay, so we're going to make a new drone. So this will just be a character. I'm literally just going to call it new drone since this is for the video. Let's give it a little bit. This one I think I maybe make a cube instead of a sphere. But we will grab this material. I like that one. Okay. So I'm going to make it like this. I'm going to change this. Let's say 32 by 32. Is that enough? Make it a bit taller. And we're going to add in just the little things so we can kind of see direction. And I'll add maybe a sphere in front. Okay, that should be fine. There's our drone. Let's put the material on everything. Like that. Okay, very nice. We are going to want to throw in a camera in here. So camera. We'll put that kind of right on top, right here. I think maybe I'll restrict the field of view a little bit. 32, so it kind of feels like you're piloting something a bit better. And then I'm just for fancy, we're going to throw a light. And we're just going to throw that kind of at the back right here. And we'll make it this color here. And then we want to grab our drone and place it in the scene. You technically could have the spline spawn in the drone as well. Partly why I didn't have it do that is just so you can have the drone kind of come from anywhere. So you don't necessarily have to start with it coming from the spline. So for example, I might have the drone kind of come up from up here. Let's go ahead and move this spline a bit. Okay. And then the spline needs the reference to the drone. So the way to do that is lock this, so that way you can click things and it stays on this drone reference. And I'll click the drone and just slot it in right there. I can uncheck that. Okay, this drone, we want to be able to control it. So to test this, I'm going to go to World Settings and just select this drone and slot it in as my character. And if we press play, you can see we're looking through something, but we can't move anything. So we want to go to the character movement and the event graph. And under character movement, the default mode we're going to make flying. And then the, hold on, let me just pull this over here. And then we're going to scroll down, there's a little section for flying. And we can change, maybe we can increase the speed and we want to increase the acceleration, braking deceleration, and then use controller rotation is good. And then we need the player input. We will actually need an additional player input. So by default, we have look up, look right, move forward, move to the right, but we also want to add an up down, which I made left control and space for up. Notice I made the scale on the left control -1 since I want that to be down. And then for enter exit vehicle, I add an action for E. If you're in newer versions of Unreal, you do this with the advanced input system, but since we're in 5.27, we can just set it up right here. Technically, you could do it here as well, and then just like choose the keys, but particularly for the axis mapping, the up-down, it's easier to do it like this with an axis than map it to two separate things. Okay, so I'm going to paste over the movement. So this is literally the third person movement. So look at like a default third person right here. This is like this movement, with the only exception being we want the pitch in addition to the yaw. And then we also add in this one, which is the up down, which is that we add movement up and then we just use the up vector. So if we press play, we should be able to control the drone. We can look around. We can go forward, backwards. Something is off. Maybe I need to, I think maybe these are messing with things. So no, turn off the collision on these. Let's see here. Character movement, flying. Oh, we want to uncheck. No, we have that unchecked. Up. Let's see what's going on. So there's the drone right there. If we possess it, we can go forward, we can go back. I can look side to side, but I can't look. And then going forward, it's like I'm locked. I think, let me check the class settings. I think that, yeah. So it says use controller yaw. It's checked off by default, it seems, or wait. No, that's right. All right, the thing we need to switch is go over to the camera here, and we need to use pawn controller rotation under the camera. And that should let us look up and down. And then we can go side to side, just like that. Okay, so the drone works, the player can control it. I'm going to set this back to the first person. I guess technically you'd have the drone hack more drones. Heck, we may even do that, but okay. So notice I can't hack it, and that's because this doesn't have the correct interface. So if we add the player control, or no, vehicle control vehicle interface, that adds these two functions. And then we want to, I'm just going to copy this in. So hold on. So we are going to implement these interfaces. I'll explain what's going on here. So this is when we enter the vehicle. We want to save a reference to the player, and we want to tag the drone as, hey, it's being controlled, since there's certain things we want to do if that's true or not. And then when we enter exit, we want to possess whatever the player, which we have a reference to when we entered, and we'll go ahead and stop the drone from moving, so it doesn't just like drift out into the world. And then in terms of it following the spline, the system here is this. So this is the other interface. So we want to set the follow actor. Remember, this is what gets called here. If this implements this interface, go ahead and set follow actor, and we're feeding in the spline, or not the spline, the debug actor that gets the spline spawns in. And then on tick, assuming the player's not controlling the drone, and assuming the follow actor is valid, basically move towards it at the speed of the drone. Typically you want this to be a bit faster. Oops. Let's create this variable. A bit faster than the speed of the actor. So if the actor is moving at 450, we'll make this 500. So that way it can catch up instead of lagging behind the follow actor. You notice we're doing location and rotation, so it's like, well, why not just do set transform? Where is that? Set actor. It's like, well, there's this one. Why not just do this and plug in transform? And the reason is there's not actually an interp okay. So there's t interp2, but there's not actually a t interp2 constant, which is what we want. We want t interp constant, so we have to do the location and the rotation separately. It's a bit strange, but it's kind of how it has to be done. So we should, at this point, we should be able to hack it. So it's following the spline, and then notice we can control the drone, like so. One thing I might do is I wonder if we put this under the camera. There we go. Yeah. So that way the drone actually moves when we look up and down. Okay. But in terms of the actual hacking system, let's get that done. Okay. So what I think we're going to set up is we're going to make it so you can actually hack the drone from another drone. Or maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. We don't need that. Okay, so we've used the interface, enter vehicle, and okay, this is the actual drone hacking system. The spline path is working. The debug actor is basic, and we've used that. New drone will keep open for now. And third person. I'm just going to paste this in here since it makes things easier. Okay, so there's an input action to enter exit. So basically what we want to do is we want to check if there's a drone highlighted. And this is just an actor. And if it is valid, we want to enter the vehicle. The way we check that, we do that actually within the drone selection widget. So we have the text here and the lines that we're going to change color, and we set these to variable. We've centered everything, and we have the crosshair in there as well. Can't really see it. There you go. And then this is the logic. So on tick, we're actually doing a sphere trace. So we're basically saying what is in front of us. And the thing that we're doing here is we're getting the player controller, we're getting the viewport size, and then we're deprojecting the center of the screen forward. I'm going to turn on the debug for one frame. And we are seeing what is there. We are making sure to ignore the actual player. And if you hit something, then see if it implements the control vehicle interface. If it does, then go ahead and change the color of all these things to the green. And go ahead and set this text right here that says E to hack, turn it to visible. And then what we're actually doing is we made some dispatchers called found drone and no drone. And then the player, since the player has a reference to, it's the thing that spawns in the widget, and it has a reference to the HUD, we add it to the viewport, and then we bind our own events to these event dispatchers. So hey, if you found the drone, go ahead and call set near drone, and we are going to get a reference to the drone that we're looking at. And if there's no drone, then go ahead and set the near drone to nothing. And if the player gets repossessed, turn the HUD back on, assuming if it's not in the viewport, then go into the viewport. So notice, oh, there's the debug sphere, by the way. You can kind of see it. It's punching out. So if we're over a drone, we can hack it. Notice the HUD goes away. If we didn't have this, let's see here. So if we didn't remove the HUD, it would be like this, where the reticle would still be over. Yeah, see, technically you can hack drones from drones from drones. Or no, it's just jumping back and forth. So you would need to find a system to manage, like basically pass the player reference between drones if you wanted to chain hack drones, but that's certainly something you could do. So I'm just going to kind of slowly go over these things. So this is the drone selection widget. This is the drone hacking system within the player. These are just the normal inputs. This is the drone movement. And I'm going to scroll down here. And then the camera settings. Remember, this needs to be checked. And this is the enter vehicle logic and exit vehicle logic. Exit the drone at this point. And this is the set follow actor. This is where you would put 3D pathfinding, if you have it. That's where it would go. Instead of, this is quite simple. It's just kind of lerping it to the follow actor. And then it goes back. Okay. Let's go ahead and turn off this debug. And this is the drone system. Not really a full tutorial, more of an overview. Just trying to overview of how someone could do a system like this and the different options. All this logic does work, so if it doesn't work for you, either post a comment or go ahead and post a question in Discord. We helped a lot of people. There's plenty of people who looked at other tutorials and had problems, and we got them sorted out, and their stuff is working now. So again, if you do have a problem, I check the Discord fairly often, so feel free to post a question, and maybe some other people will learn from what you're trying to figure out. All right, catch you later.